I realized I was in love with my best friend at the exact moment he told me he loved someone else. And the worst part? He said it like it was nothing. Like it wasn't the kind of sentence that could quietly ruin someone. It happened on a random Tuesday night. Nothing special. No big setup, no dramatic music in the background, just me and Colt sitting on the hood of his car like we'd done 100 times before. We were parked outside the same late-night diner we always went to. The neon sign flickered above us, casting that soft pink glow over everything, making the world feel a little unreal. Colt had a milkshake in his hand, lazily stirring it with a straw, while I leaned back on my elbows, staring up at the sky like I was deep in thought. I wasn't. I was watching him. I always did that when he wasn't looking. The way his hair fell into his eyes, slightly messy like he never really tried but it still worked. The way his jaw tightened when he focused on something, even something as stupid as a melting milkshake. The way his laugh always came out a little louder than expected, like he didn't care who heard. We'd been best friends for almost 5 years. College roommates turned inseparable. The kind of friendship where people just assumed we'd known each other forever. The kind where everyone joked, "You two are basically a couple," and we'd both laugh it off. Well, he laughed it off. I pretended to. "Dude," Colt suddenly said, nudging my leg with his foot. "You're being weirdly quiet tonight." I blinked, snapping out of it. "What?" "No, I'm not." "You are," he said, squinting at me. "You've said like 3 words in the last 10 minutes. Maybe I just like listening to you talk." He snorted. "Yeah, okay. That's a first." I rolled my eyes, but there was a small smile tugging at my lips. This was normal. Easy. Safe. That's what I told myself. Because as long as things stayed like this, I didn't have to deal with the truth that had been creeping up on me for months. Maybe longer. I just hadn't let myself say it out loud yet. Colt leaned back beside me, shoulder brushing against mine. Casual. Effortless. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. It always did. "You remember that road trip we took last summer?" he asked suddenly. I huffed out a laugh. "The one where your car almost died in the middle of nowhere?" "Hey, it did not die," he shot back. "It just needed a break." "Yeah, for 6 hours." He grinned. "Worth it though." I turned my head slightly, looking at him. "Because we got stranded in a gas station with no signal?" "No," he said, quieter now. "Because it was just us." Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. Just us. There were so many moments like that with Colt. Little things that felt bigger than they should. Words that lingered a little too long. Looks that lasted a second too long. Enough to make me wonder. Not enough to be sure. And that's the dangerous part. Because when you're not sure, your brain fills in the gaps with hope. And hope can be brutal. I swallowed, forcing myself to look away. "Yeah," I said casually. "Guess it wasn't that bad." He didn't respond right away. I could feel his eyes on me. That familiar, heavy silence settled between us, the kind that felt like it meant something, even if either of us said it out loud. For a second, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe he was going to say something. Maybe I wasn't the only one feeling this. My heart started picking up, slow at first, then faster, like it was trying to prepare me for something I didn't even understand yet. "Hey," Colt said. I turned back to him. And then he smiled. Not his usual dumb, carefree grin. Something softer. Almost nervous. And that's when everything changed. "I think I'm in love with someone." It felt like the world just stopped. No dramatic crash. No loud sound. Just silence. The kind that presses in on you from all sides. I blinked at him, my brain lagging behind, trying to process what he just said. "Oh," I managed. "Real smooth." Colt let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize it at first. But," he laughed softly, "it kinda hit me all at once, you know? I didn't know." Or maybe I did. Just not like this. Not with someone else. Who? I asked, and I hated how normal my voice sounded. Like I wasn't sitting there, feeling something crack open in my chest. Colt hesitated. And for a split second, just a second, I thought maybe he was about to say my name. But then. Her name's Lila. Her. The word hit harder than anything else. I nodded slowly, like that made sense. Like everything was fine. Lila. I repeated. Yeah, he said, smiling again. I met her a couple weeks ago. We've been hanging out, and I don't know, man, it just feels different. Different. I forced a small laugh. Different how? He looked down at his hands, then back at me. Like, I actually care what happens, you know? He said. Like I don't want to mess it up. I swallowed. Because I knew exactly what that felt like. I'd been living it for months. Just, not with Lila. With him. And that's when it finally hit me. Not slowly. Not gently. All at once. Sitting there, under that stupid flickering neon light, listening to my best friend talk about how he was in love with someone else. I realized I was in love with Colt. And I was already too late. I don't remember what I said after that. Not clearly. It's like my brain just switched into autopilot. I know I smiled. I know I nodded at the right moments. I even threw in a, "That's great, man," somewhere in there, like I was supposed to. Like I was a good best friend. But everything felt distant. Muted. Like I was watching myself from the outside, playing a role I didn't even realize I'd been rehearsing for months. Colt kept talking. About Lila. About how they met at some stupid campus event he almost didn't go to. About how she laughed at one of his terrible jokes. About how easy it felt with her. Easy. That word again. I hated it. Because that's what we were. Me and him. We were easy. No pressure. No expectations. No risk. And maybe that's exactly why I never said anything. Because the moment you say something, it stops being easy. You ever get that feeling? Colt asked suddenly, turning to me. I blinked. What? Like you meet someone, and it just clicks? He said. Like everything makes sense all of a sudden? I forced a shrug, even though my chest felt tight. Yeah, I guess. He smiled, satisfied with that answer, and looked back out at the empty street. Meanwhile, I just sat there, staring at him. Thinking. Yeah. I do know that feeling. I just didn't realize it until 5 minutes ago. And the worst part? It wasn't even a sudden thing. Not really. It was like, all these small moments I'd ignored before suddenly lined up. Every look. Every touch. Every time he chose me over someone else. All of it hit me at once. Like my brain finally stopped pretending it didn't mean anything. Hey, Colt said again, quieter this time. I turned to him. You okay? There it was. That look. The one he only used when he was actually paying attention. Not just joking around. Not just being his usual self. This was the real Colt. The one who noticed things. The one who cared. And for a second, I almost told him. It was right there. Sitting on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, I'm okay. Just realized I'm in love with you and you just told me you love someone else. Easy. Simple. Honest. But instead, I just huffed out a laugh and looked away. Yeah, I said. I'm good. Just tired. He studied me for a second longer. Like he didn't quite believe me. But then he nodded. All right, he said. If you say so. And just like that. It passed. The moment was gone. Buried under everything we didn't say. We drove back to our apartment not long after that. The ride was quieter than usual. Not awkward exactly, just different. Colt had music playing low in the background, something slow and familiar, but neither of us were really paying attention to it. I kept my eyes on the window, watching the city lights blur past, trying not to think, trying not to replay everything over and over again. Failing. You should meet her, Colt said suddenly. Of course he did. I swallowed. Yeah? Yeah, he said, glancing over at me briefly. I think you'd like her. I doubt that. But I just nodded. Sure. She's actually coming to that thing on Friday, he added. The one at Jake's place. Of course she is. Cool, I said. Cool. God, I sounded so normal. I hated it. Colt smiled a little, like he was relieved I wasn't making it weird. Because why would I? I'm just the best friend. When we got back to the apartment, everything felt off. Not in an obvious way. Nothing had changed. Same couch. Same kitchen. Same stupid pile of dishes Colt kept pretending he was gonna do. But it felt like I was seeing it all differently. Like I didn't belong in it the same way anymore. Colt tossed his keys onto the counter and stretched. I'm gonna shower, he said. You want anything before I disappear for an hour? I shook my head. Nah. Cool. He hesitated for a second, like he was about to say something else. Then he didn't. Don't stay up too late, he added casually, already heading toward his room. Yeah, I muttered. As soon as his door closed, the silence hit me hard. I stood there in the middle of the living room for a second, just existing. Then I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. Shit, I whispered. Because now there was no pretending. No distractions. No Colt sitting next to me to focus on. Just me. And the truth. I dragged a hand over my face and dropped onto the couch, staring up at the ceiling. I'm in love with my best friend. Saying it in my head felt unreal. Like it didn't quite fit. But it was there. Clear as anything. And there was no undoing it. No going back to how things were before I knew. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I closed my eyes, but that just made it worse. Because all I could see was him. His smile. The way he looked at me sometimes. The way he said, "It's just us," earlier. My chest tightened. Because maybe it really was just us. At least, it had been. Until now. Until Lila. Until I realized everything too late. I let out a slow breath and sat up, running my hands through my hair. Get it together, I muttered to myself. Because this didn't change anything. Not really. He was still Colt. I was still me. And we were still best friends. That's what mattered. That's what I had to hold on to. Even if it meant pretending like my heart wasn't quietly breaking every time he smiled at someone else. And the worst part? Friday was only 3 days away. The day I was going to meet the girl he was in love with. Friday came faster than I wanted it to. I tried not to think about it all week. Tried to drown it out with work, random distractions, even going out with other friends just to avoid being alone with my thoughts. Didn't really work. Because no matter what I was doing, it always circled back to the same thing. Colt. And her. Lila. I hadn't even met her yet, and I already hated how much space she was taking up in my head. Not because of anything she did, but because of what she meant. You ready or what? Colt called from his room. I was leaning against the kitchen counter, staring at my phone like it was the most interesting thing in the world. Yeah, I said, even though I hadn't moved. A second later, his door opened. And yeah. Of course he looked good. He always did, but tonight it felt intentional. Dark jeans, a clean shirt that actually fit him properly for once, hair slightly styled like he'd put in effort but didn't want it to seem like he had. Damn, I said before I could stop myself. You trying to impress someone? He smirked. Shut up. But he didn't deny it. Of course he didn't. I forced a grin. Relax, man. You look great. And I meant it. That was the problem. Colt grabbed his keys, then paused, looking at me. You good? He asked. Again. He'd been doing that all week. Checking in, watching me a little more closely than usual. Like he could tell something was off. I held his gaze for a second, then nodded. Yeah, I said. I'm good. He studied me, just like he had a few nights ago. Then he nodded back. All right, he said. Let's go. Jake's place was already packed when we got there. Music loud, people everywhere, that mix of laughter and conversation that blurred into one constant noise. Normally, I liked this kind of thing. It was easy to get lost in it. But tonight I felt hyper-aware of everything. Especially Colt. He was right next to me when we walked in, shoulder brushing mine as we pushed through the crowd. Same as always. Familiar. Comfortable. Dangerous. Drinks? He asked. Yeah, I said quickly. I'll grab them. I needed a second. Just a second to breathe. To get my head straight before. Easton. I froze. That voice. Not Colt. Someone else. I turned. And there she was. Lila. Okay. I'll admit it. I was expecting to hate her instantly. I was ready for it. But she wasn't what I expected. She was normal. In a good way. Not over the top, not trying too hard. Just easy. Comfortable. The kind of person you could talk to without feeling like you had to be anything other than yourself. Which made it worse. Because now I got it. Why he liked her. Hey, she said, smiling at me. You're Easton, right? I nodded slowly. Yeah. I've heard a lot about you, she added. Of course you have. I forced a small smile. Hopefully nothing bad. She laughed lightly. No, actually the opposite. Colt talks about you a lot. My chest tightened. I didn't know if that made things better or worse. Before I could respond. Hey! Colt's voice cut in as he appeared beside us, slightly out of breath like he'd rushed over. His eyes went straight to her. And everything else just disappeared. The way his face lit up. The way his whole posture changed. Like she was the only thing in the room that mattered. I'd never seen him look at anyone like that before. Lila, he said, smiling. Hey, she replied, softer now. And just like that, I felt it. That shift. The one you can't ignore. The one that tells you exactly where you stand. I wasn't the center of his world in that moment. I wasn't even close. I was just there. Easton was just telling me how you've been talking about me, she said, glancing between us. Traitor. I raised my hands slightly. Hey, don't drag me into this. Colt laughed, nudging my shoulder. Ignore him. That touch. It lingered for a second. Long enough to mess with my head. Short enough to mean nothing to him. I'm gonna grab those drinks, I said quickly, stepping back before I could overthink it. Yeah, get me something. Colt started. Whatever. I cut him off, already turning away. I needed space. At the kitchen counter, I gripped the edge a little tighter than necessary. My reflection stared back at me faintly in the dark window. I looked normal, which felt like a lie. Because inside, everything felt off balance. I grabbed a couple of cups, pouring whatever was closest without really paying attention. And then, hey! I froze again. But this time, it was him. Colt. Of course it was. You okay? He asked, stepping up beside me. Third time. Third time this week. I let out a quiet breath. Yeah. Why does everyone keep asking me that? He frowned slightly. Because you've been acting weird. There it was. I forced a small laugh. I'm not acting weird. You are, he said simply. You've been distant all week. Distant. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the concern in his eyes. The way he was trying to figure me out. And for a second, I almost cracked. Almost told him everything. But then I remembered. The way he looked at her. And just like that, The words died in my throat. I'm fine, I said quietly. Seriously. He didn't look convinced. But before he could push it further, Colt! Lila's voice from across the room. And just like that, his attention shifted. Again. Coming! He called back, then glanced at me one last time. We'll talk later, okay? I nodded. Yeah, I said. But we both knew we wouldn't. He gave me a small look, like he wanted to say something else. Then he turned and went back to her. I stood there for a second, holding 2 drinks I didn't even want. Watching him walk away. Watching him choose her. Not consciously. Not intentionally. But still. It was obvious. And that's when it really sank in. This wasn't just a crush. This wasn't something I could brush off or ignore. This was real. And it hurt. Way more than I expected. I took a sip of my drink, wincing slightly at how strong it was. Yeah, I muttered to myself. I'm screwed. I don't know how long I stood there in the kitchen. Long enough for the ice in my drink to melt. Long enough for the noise of the party to fade into something distant and dull. Long enough to realize I couldn't stay here like this, watching them. So I didn't. I set the cup down, wiped my hands on my jeans, and slipped out through the back door. The night air hit me instantly. Cool. Quiet. A complete contrast to the chaos inside. I exhaled slowly, stepping down onto the back patio, then further into the yard until the music was just a muffled thump behind me. Better, I muttered. I shoved my hands into my pockets, pacing a little, trying to shake off whatever the hell was sitting heavy in my chest. It shouldn't feel like this. That's what I kept telling myself. He's your best friend. He's happy. That should be enough. And it was. It just also hurt like hell. I leaned back against the fence, staring up at the sky. Same as a few nights ago. Except everything was different now. Because now I knew. There was no pretending anymore. No. Maybe this means something. No. What if? Just reality. And reality was tough. The back door creaked open. I didn't turn around. I already knew who it was. You always disappear like this. Colt's voice. I huffed quietly. Only when I'm overwhelmed by your terrible party taste. He stepped up beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched but didn't. That tiny gap felt intentional. I knew you were acting weird, he said. I glanced at him. You're really stuck on that, huh? Yeah, he replied simply. Of course he was. Colt had always been like that. Persistent. Annoyingly observant when it mattered. He leaned back against the fence next to me, mirroring my posture. For a minute, neither of us said anything. Just stood there. Together. Like always. And somehow, that made it worse. Did I do something? He asked finally. I blinked. What? You've been off, he said. All week. And it started after that night. My chest tightened. Of course it did. Because that night changed everything. You didn't do anything, I said quickly. Too quickly. He noticed. He always did. Easton. The way he said my name. Low. Careful. Like he was trying to get through to me without pushing too hard. It almost worked. I looked at him again. Really looked. At the concern. The confusion. The way he was trying to figure me out like I was some kind of puzzle. And I realized. He had no idea. None. Which made this easier. And harder at the same time. I let out a slow breath. I just have stuff on my mind. That's all. Stuff like what? I hesitated. Because I couldn't tell him the truth. But I also couldn't just keep brushing him off. So I settled for something in between. Just life, I said. You know. Work. Everything. He didn't buy it. I could see it in his face. But he also didn't call me out on it. Instead, he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. If you say so. There was a pause. Then, you met Lila? Not a question. A statement. I swallowed. Yeah. And? He asked. I forced a small shrug. She seems nice. She is, he said a little too quickly. I noticed that. Of course I did. A small, almost unintentional smile pulled at his lips. And there it was again. That look. The one that made everything inside me twist. Yeah, I said quietly. I can see why you like her. He glanced at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. But before I could figure out what it was, he looked away. I don't know, he said, almost to himself. It just feels different. Different. That word again. I nodded, staring straight ahead. Yeah, I said. You said that. Another silence settled between us. But this one felt heavier. Like there was something sitting right under the surface, waiting to come out. And for a second, I thought maybe it would. That maybe he'd say something else. Something real. Something that would explain why this felt so complicated. But instead, come back inside, he said. It's boring without you. I let out a quiet laugh. You've got Lila. I think you'll survive. He didn't laugh. I frowned slightly, glancing at him. He was already looking at me. And for a moment, something shifted. Something small. But enough to make my heart trip over itself. I don't just want her there, he said. Soft. Honest. Too honest. My breath caught. Because. What does that even mean? Before I could respond, the door opened again. Colt? Lila's voice. And just like that, the moment shattered. He looked back toward the house. Then at me. Then back again. And I saw it. That split second of hesitation. That choice. And then. Yeah, he called. I'm coming. Of course he was. He pushed off the fence, brushing past me slightly. That familiar contact. That same electric feeling. Don't stay out here too long, he said, quieter now. Then he was gone. I stood there alone again, staring at the spot where he'd just been. My heart still racing. Because of what he said. Because of what he didn't say. Because of that look. And I realized this was going to get a lot more complicated. I shouldn't have gone back inside. I knew that the second I opened the door. The music hit me again, loud and overwhelming, people laughing, shouting over each other, but now it all felt distant. Like I didn't belong in it anymore. And then I saw them. Colt and Lila. Standing too close. Talking like the rest of the room didn't exist. And the way he looked at her. Yeah. There was no misreading that. I exhaled slowly, dragging a hand over my face. Great, I muttered. Exactly what I needed. I thought about leaving. Seriously. Just grabbing my jacket, texting him some excuse, and getting out before I had to watch any more of this. But I didn't. Because that would be obvious. And the one thing I couldn't afford right now was being obvious. Easton! I turned just in time to see Jake shoving a drink into my hand. You disappeared, man, he said. Thought you bailed. Almost did, I admitted. He laughed. Yeah, you look like you're having a great time. Living the dream, I said flatly. Jake raised an eyebrow but didn't push. All right, he said. Well, at least pretend you're enjoying yourself. You're bringing down the vibe. I snorted. I'll do my best. He grinned and disappeared back into the crowd, leaving me there again. Alone. Well, not alone. Just not where I wanted to be. I ended up on the couch. Drink in hand? Half watching people move around the room, half lost in my own head. Trying not to look at them. Failing. Every time I told myself don't look, I looked. And every time, it got worse. Because it wasn't just in my head. They had something. Something real. Something easy. And I hated how obvious it was. Not because I wanted him to be miserable, but because I wanted, I don't know, a chance. Even a small one. And it felt like I never even had that. Hey! I tensed. Colt. Of course. I looked up at him, trying to keep my expression neutral. Hey! He frowned slightly as he sat down next to me. You disappeared again. I shrugged. I was here. Physically, he said. Not really here. God. Why did he have to be like this? So aware. I'm fine, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. His expression shifted. Not hurt. But something close. Okay, he said slowly. A beat of silence. Then, did I do something? Again. I clenched my jaw slightly. No. Then what is it? He pushed. Because you've been off all night. Actually, he let out a breath. All week. I looked at him. Really looked. At the frustration starting to creep in. At the way he was trying to understand something I couldn't explain. And suddenly, I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of acting like everything was normal when it clearly wasn't. You really don't get it? I asked quietly. He frowned. Get what? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course he didn't. How could he? You brought me here, I said, my voice low. To meet the girl you're in love with. His expression flickered. Confusion. Yeah, he said slowly. And you expected me to just what? I gestured vaguely. Be totally fine watching that. Watching what? He asked, clearly not following. I stared at him. Seriously? Watching you, I said. With her. There was a pause. A long one. And for a second, I thought maybe it clicked. Maybe he finally understood. But then, Easton, he said carefully, I don't get why that would. I shook my head, cutting him off. Of course you don't. There it was. The line I shouldn't have crossed. But I couldn't stop now. Not when it was already spilling out. You don't see it. I continued, my voice tighter now. You don't see anything unless it's right in front of you. His jaw tightened slightly. Then tell me. That hit harder than I expected. Because I couldn't. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But saying it out loud? That would change everything. There'd be no going back after that. And I wasn't ready to lose him. Not like that. So instead, I shook my head again. It doesn't matter, I said. Yeah, it does, he shot back. You're my best friend, and you're clearly upset about something, so yeah, it matters. My chest tightened at that. Best friend. Right. That's what I was. And maybe that's all I'd ever be. I swallowed, forcing myself to look away. It's nothing, I said quietly. Bullshit, Colt said immediately. I flinched slightly. Not at the word. At the tone. Because he never talked to me like that. Not really. I'm not stupid, he added, softer now. Something's going on. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. There is. He waited. And for a second, the entire world felt like it narrowed down to just this moment. Just us. This was it. I could feel it. The turning point. The thing that was going to decide everything. My heart was pounding so hard it actually hurt. My throat felt tight. Dry. And I knew. If I said it now, there was no taking it back. No pretending. No. Just friends. It would all be out in the open. Messy. Complicated. Real. Colt was still watching me. Waiting. Easton, he said quietly. And that was the thing that almost broke me. The way he said my name. Like it mattered. Like I mattered. More than I should. More than just a friend. Or maybe. Exactly like a friend. And that was the problem. I opened my mouth. And then, Colt? Lila again. Always at the worst possible moment. We both froze. I closed my mouth. The moment. Gone. Again. Colt looked between me and the direction of her voice. Hesitating. And this time, I didn't wait to see what he'd choose. I already knew. I'm gonna head out, I said, standing up quickly. What? He said. Easton. I'm tired, I cut in. I'll see you later. Dude, don't just. But I was already walking away. Because if I stayed, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Outside, the cold air hit me again. But this time, it didn't help. Because now, everything was worse. I don't remember the walk home. Not really. I just remember moving. One step after another, hands shoved deep into my pockets, head down like that would somehow make everything feel less real. It didn't. If anything, it made it worse. Because now there was nothing to distract me. No music. No people. No Colt. Just my thoughts. And they were loud. You almost told him. That kept replaying in my head. Over and over. I could still feel it that moment. The way everything narrowed down to just us. The way he looked at me. The way he said my name. And for a second, I really thought I was going to do it. Say it. End it. Or start something. I don't even know which. But then, of course, it got interrupted. Again. I let out a bitter laugh under my breath. Figures. By the time I got back to the apartment, it felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Like the place was holding its breath. I tossed my keys onto the counter, harder than I meant to, and ran a hand through my hair. Get it together, I muttered. Same words as before. Same useless result. I paced for a bit. Sat down. Stood up again. Checked my phone. Nothing. Of course, nothing. Why would there be? He was still at the party. With her. I swallowed, forcing that thought down. Didn't help. I ended up in my room. Lights off. Just sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Trying to think. Trying not to think. And the more I sat there, the clearer it became. I couldn't keep doing this. Pretending. Acting like everything was fine. Because it wasn't. Not even close. And if I didn't say something, it was just going to get worse. Watching him with her. Listening to him talk about her. Smiling like it didn't feel like something was slowly tearing me apart from the inside. Yeah. No. I couldn't do that. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of it. My heart jumped. Too fast. Too automatic. Colt. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe for a second. Then. His footsteps. Slow. Hesitant. Not his usual careless energy. Easton? My name echoed down the hallway. I closed my eyes. Of course he followed me. Of course he wasn't just going to let it go. Yeah. I called back, my voice rougher than I intended. A pause. Then his footsteps got closer. Until. A knock on my door. Soft. Can I come in? I hesitated. Because I knew. The second I said yes. There was no avoiding it anymore. But I also knew. If I said no, he wouldn't leave it alone. He never did. Yeah, I said finally. The door opened slowly. And there he was. Same as always. Except. Not. His expression was different. Serious. Focused. On me. Why'd you leave? He asked. No small talk. No jokes. Straight to it. I let out a quiet breath. I told you. I was tired. Don't do that, he said immediately. I frowned. Do what? That, he said, stepping into the room. The brushing it off thing. You've been doing it all night. I looked away. Because he was right. And I hated that. I didn't feel like staying, I said instead. Why? God. He just wouldn't stop. Colt. No. He cut in, sharper this time. I'm not dropping it. I blinked, surprised. He never pushed like this. Not with me. You left in the middle of a conversation, he continued. You've been acting weird all week, and every time I ask, you shut me out. So yeah, I'm not dropping it. My chest tightened. Because this was different. This wasn't just concern anymore. This was frustration. Real frustration. And it was directed at me. Why do you care so much? I snapped before I could stop myself. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Colt froze. Actually froze. Like I'd just hit him with something he wasn't expecting. Why do I care? He repeated, quieter now. I clenched my jaw. Yeah. Great job, Easton. But I didn't take it back. I couldn't. Because part of me needed to hear the answer. Needed to know. Yeah, I said. Why does it matter so much? There was a pause. A long one. And for the first time all night, Colt looked unsure. Like he didn't have an immediate answer. Like he had to actually think about it. And then, because it's you. Simple. Direct. And it hit harder than anything else he could have said. My breath caught. Because. What the hell does that even mean? You're my best friend, he added, like that explained everything. There it was again. That word. Best friend. It shouldn't have hurt. But it did. God, it did. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head slightly. Yeah, I said. Exactly. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I laughed quietly, but there was nothing funny about it. It means you don't get it, I said. Then help me get it. He shot back. And just like that, we were right back there. That same moment. That same edge. Only this time, there was no party. No interruptions. No distractions. Just us. And the truth sitting right between us. Waiting. I could feel it building again. That pressure. That need to say it. To just end this. My hands curled slightly at my sides. My heart was pounding. Colt was watching me. Not looking away. Not backing off. Waiting. Easton, he said again, softer now. And that was it. The last push. Because I couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep pretending. Couldn't keep hurting like this and acting like it was nothing. So I took a breath. Looked him straight in the eyes. And finally, I said it. I'm in love with you. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. Real. And just like that, everything changed. I'm in love with you. The second I said it, I felt it. That shift. Like something snapped into place, and broke at the same time. Colt didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at me like I'd said something in a language he didn't understand. And honestly, I kind of wished I had. Because then maybe I could take it back. Pretend it never happened. But I couldn't. It was out now. Real. Irreversible. Say something, I muttered, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Because the silence. It was unbearable. Colt blinked finally. Once. Slow. He started, then stopped. Ran a hand through his hair. Looked away. That alone. That hurt more than anything. Because Colt never struggled for words. Not with me. Never. Until now. I didn't know, he said finally. Quiet. Honest. And yeah. Of course he didn't. I let out a hollow laugh. Yeah. I figured. Another silence. Thick. Heavy. I swallowed, forcing myself to keep going. Because if I stopped now, I'd regret it. I didn't know either, I admitted. Not really. Not until the other night. His eyes flicked back to mine. When I told you about Lila, he said. Not a question. I nodded. Yeah. That seemed to hit him. I could see it. The way his jaw tightened slightly. The way his posture shifted. Like something was starting to click. You've been like this all week? He asked. Yeah. And tonight. He trailed off. I let out a breath. Yeah. Another pause. Then. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. I stared at him. Seriously? Because you were busy telling me you're in love with someone else, I said, a little sharper than I intended. He flinched. Just slightly. But I saw it. Right, he muttered. We stood there again. Both of us trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Because there's no script for this. No easy way out. No version where this doesn't change things. I don't want to lose you, Colt said suddenly. And that almost broke me. Because of course he didn't. Why would he? From his perspective. Everything was fine until 5 minutes ago. I'm still here, I said quietly. But it's not the same, he replied. And he was right. God, he was right. It wasn't the same before, I said. You just didn't know. That hit. I could see it land. The weight of it. The realization. He looked at me differently after that. Not distant. Not cold. Just aware. Finally. What do you want me to say? He asked after a moment. And that was the question, wasn't it? I let out a slow breath. I don't know, I admitted. I didn't say it so you'd say it back. Because that would be insane. Right. I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it's not. He nodded slowly. Processing. Always processing. That makes sense, he said. And weirdly, that helped. Just a little. Because at least he wasn't shutting me down. Not completely. But I'm with Lila, he added. And there it was. Reality. Clear. Simple. Painful. I know, I said. And I did. That was the whole problem. He hesitated. Like he wanted to say more. Like there was something else there. But he didn't. And maybe that was the answer. I nodded once, more to myself than to him. Okay. Okay? He repeated. Yeah, I said. You don't feel the same. I get it. He didn't confirm it. But he didn't deny it either. And honestly, that was enough. I think I need some space, I added quietly. That one hurt to say. More than anything else. Colt's expression tightened. How much space? He asked. I shrugged slightly. I don't know. Just a little time to get my head straight. He nodded slowly. Not arguing. Not pushing. Which somehow made it worse. Okay, he said. We stood there for another second. Neither of us moving. Neither of us knowing what to do next. 5 years of friendship. And suddenly it felt like we were strangers trying to figure each other out. Easton, he said. I looked at him. And for a second, there was something there. Something unfinished. Something that almost. But then it was gone. I'm sorry, he said instead. I nodded. Yeah. I turned toward the door. Hand on the handle. Paused. Then. I don't regret telling you, I said without looking back. And that part was true. Even if it hurt. Even if it changed everything. At least it was honest. When I stepped out into the hallway, it felt different. Quieter. Like something had settled. Not better. But clearer. And sometimes. That's all you get. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we go back to how things were. I don't know if that's even possible. But I do know this. Some things, once you say them out loud, you can't take them back. And maybe That's not a bad thing.